Yes, it is true. The ridiculous street racing car porn franchise has become a multi-billion-dollar money-making machine. It used to be obscure with a small cult following invisible to the average moviegoer. If Google Earth were one of them, it couldn't find it even if it were disguised as the Empire State Building. But I'm not here just to recap the events in which this small Hollywood movie became one of the largest franchises today. This is not one of those videos. I mean, it is kind of one of those videos, but I want to go deeper than that. How did it do so? What happened behind the scenes? How do I, despite the ridiculous nature of these movies, think that it is an incredibly genius series that has managed to sucker all those average moviegoers to go apeshit over these movies? Well, let's get started. Part 1. The mind-boggling insane, however kind of genius shift in storytelling that turned this Point Break ripoff into the super spy espionage family franchise. And don't worry guys, I will get into Hobbs and Shaw and how that goes even further into genre filmmaking later on, so if you're here just for that, skip to these time codes, but if you're in for the ride, let's begin with The Fast and the Furious. Brian O'Connor is new to the street racing business while Dominic Toretto is the veteran. They race, Dom wins, they become friends, but wait, O'Connor is a cop. Police think these street racers are behind some robberies in the city, so he is undercover. O'Connor starts to date Dom's sister. Dom finds out he is a cop. They race. Dom crashes, but O'Connor lets his new friend go. Next up, Too Fast, Too Furious. O'Connor runs off to Florida and is now a real street racer. He's arrested by the FBI and is asked to help infiltrate this drug dealer's crew. O'Connor brings along his longtime friend / funny guy Roman Pierce for the ride. They crash a car into the dealer's yacht. The bad guys lose. End of movie. Tokyo Drift is a side story in the Fast and Furious franchise that follows a brand new character, Sean, who loves to race but he can't turn. He gets sent to Tokyo by his dad for some reason, where Han teaches him to drift because in Tokyo, they drift. They become rivals with these bad guys, get in some trouble, and race through Tokyo where Han gets hit and dies. They have a final race where Sean wins respect and all is good. Also, Dom shows up for whatever reason. Fast and Furious. Dom is back with his girl Letty and wait, is that Han? They rob some stuff but cops are onto him so Dom leaves, but Letty dies so he comes back. O'Connor is now an FBI agent. Why did they let him in? Who knows, but he is after some drug dealers. After a failed attempt to get the dealer and a failed attempt at revenge for Dom, they team up with Wonder Woman. After a cool race in the tunnel, they catch the dealer. Dom gets his revenge for Letty, but stays with the injured Brian and gets arrested. But wait! O'Connor and Dom's sister are back to break him free. Fast 5, aka the best one. They manage to break Dom free, making O'Connor a criminal for good. They run to Brazil and steal some stuff, while Special Agent Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is on the job to bring our family to justice. Our family plots for one last job, stealing millions from a crime lord by planning a heist. Said heist brings everyone back Avengers style, including but not limited to Wonder Woman, Han, Roman, Taj, and more. Hobbs and Dom fight, but our family is caught. But wait, the crime lords ambushes them, making Hobbs mad. The heist is back on with the help of Hobbs. They literally steal the safe full of money, and our family dupes Hobbs and retire with millions in their pockets. Furious 6 begins with Hobbs dragging everyone back in the game because Letty is alive. She's working for a special ops mercenary, Owen Shaw, because she got amnesia. Our crew, now a private team of international spies a la Hobbs, beats a freaking tank, but the bad guy still gets away. But then they manage to take out a freaking cargo plane and capture the bad guy, almost killing him in the process. While taking a ride on the world's largest runway, Wonder Woman ends up dying and becomes Wonder Woman in real life in the DC movies. Han is sad about it, so guess what? He goes to Tokyo. By the end, our family is pardoned for all of their crimes and they go back to live in LA. Furious 7 begins with Jason Statham as Shaw's bigger and badder brother, and he's pissed. He puts Hobbs in the hospital, goes to Tokyo to kill Han, and almost kills Brian and his family. The team once again comes back together to beat Shaw 2.0, but first, they need to find the MacGuffin that can see everyone. They skydive cars out of a plane and fail. They go to Dubai and jump building to building to building and succeed. Our family finds Shaw, beats his evil drone, and Dom street fights Shaw to win. O'Connor is retired for good this time, and sadly, Paul Walker dies in real life. Rest in peace, Paul Walker. The Fate of the Furious, which is possibly the worst title in the history of cinema, begins with our family continuing their work as a private team of international spies, now ran by Kurt Russell, but Dom betrays them. Bad girl Charlize Theron, super hacker, has Dom's ex and apparently his child hostages. No! Hobbs and Shaw team up? Crazy! Charlize, of course, has Dom go after nuclear launch codes because she's bad, and he succeeds, but refuses to kill his family in the process, so Charlize kills his ex. Now in Russia, our fam has to take down a submarine. How? Both the Shaw brothers, who used to be bad guys by the way, go save Dom's baby because they are all about family. Now that the kid is safe, Dom is good again. They blow up the sub. Dom somehow survives the explosion because of the power of family, and Charlize gets away. Hobbs retires, Shaw is now a part of the family, kind of, and that is the Fast and the Furious franchise up until the Fate of the Furious. Which brings us to part 2. The accelerated velocity of cash flow that nosedive directly into the pockets of corporate overlords. And that's really just my obnoxious way of saying that the box office money just kept on stacking up. And boy, did that cash flow nosedive directly into the pockets of those corporate overlords. And like I said, The Fast and the Furious was really a small Hollywood movie with only a budget of $38 million that grossed a total of $207 million in its worldwide total. And comparing that to the most popular movie in the franchise, Furious 7, which had a budget of $190 million, making $147 million opening weekend alone, which is almost more than The Fast and Furious made in its lifetime, with a total gross of $1.5 billion worldwide. That is a huge jump from where it started. And even though Furious 7 wasn't the most recent movie out of the gate, The Fate of the Furious still made $1.2 billion in the box office. And you slowly go down the list, you see that the order of release is really the order in which these movies made money. In third place is Fast and the Furious 6, grossing $788 million, Fast 5 grossing $626 million, Fast and the Furious making $363 million, and Too Fast, Too Furious making $236 million, with Tokyo Drift in last place only grossing $158 million with an $85 million budget. That is not great, and that was their original attempt to reboot the franchise. And if you really look at it, Fast 5 is the one that really doubled their total income because, I think mainly because The Rock joined the franchise, and in my opinion, that movie is the best one in the franchise, but it's also like the Avengers of the Fast and Furious movies because they brought back everyone in the franchise for this one epic heist movie, and I think that is when The Fast and Furious was at its best, was when it was focused as a heist movie and really just delved into that genre, making one of my favorite movies in the franchise and one of my favorite action movies, period. And I think you can give a lot of credit to The Rock, but I think you have to give the biggest credit in the world to the producers behind this franchise because they really did focus in on what other franchises have been doing to make money. So they kind of thought, okay, all these Avengers movies are coming out, they're kind of building up to something big. Let's do something big with Fast 5. And Fast 5 actually came out before the first Avengers came out in 2011 versus the Avengers in 2012. So they really beat them to the punch. And so as time went on and the shared universe became as popular as it did, and every single studio has been trying to do it, Fast and the Furious learned from it, but stuck with their normal franchises, going one at a time, building the story, and really kind of televising these events on the big screen in a serial type of way. And if you go to The Fate of the Furious, that movie was really trying to set up so many different things, which I didn't personally like that movie, but if you go directly into Hobbs and Shaw, which I'll get into a little bit right here, it really does transition and set up that movie so well for this movie, or for this franchise to have different spin-offs, and Hobbs and Shaw being the first spin-off in the series is a great way to start doing it. I think they have a shared universe in their hands that they have slowly built up to that is honestly more successful than the DC universe, more popular than the DC universe, and honestly more critically acclaimed than the DC universe, which is insane. I think sans Wonder Woman, which I mentioned earlier, but overall, this franchise is more successful than the DC Comics universe, which is insane. So, if you're still with me, and I'm hoping that most of you are, this brings us to part 3. How I, Brad Stowell, unapologetically love the sci-fi romp Hobbs and Shaw. And yeah, that's right, sci-fi romp, because this movie fully embraces the fact that it is a sci-fi popcorn ridiculous movie, and I loved it. Now when you stack this up against the different movies I absolutely love this year, like a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like Us, like Avengers Endgame, this movie does not stack anywhere close to those movies. If anything, this movie is one of the more mediocre and just kind of near bad movies that I've seen this year, but let me tell you guys, I love the Fast and Furious franchise. That's mainly the reason why I made this entire video. Why in the world would someone who doesn't like the Fast and Furious movies make an entire elaborate, complicated video all about the entire franchise just to say that I hate this movie? Because I, worked on this video before I watched the movie, and I was so afraid that I was going to walk out of it not liking it, that I was going to hate it, not like I did with The Fate of the Furious. I didn't like that movie, but I didn't hate it. I was so afraid that I was going to hate this movie, but you know what? This movie is just so ridiculous, and it knows that it's ridiculous, and it fully embraces the fact that this franchise is going, and it's really attacking all these other different types of genres. It was a heist movie at one point. It's a ridiculous action popcorn movie, and then now it's a sci-fi thriller, and I cannot be happier. Now, the main reason to see this movie, like I always say, is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham, and their chemistry as Hobbs and Shaw is just off the rails. Their banter between each other is perfect. And it's just, oh, it's so funny. You saw little bits of it in The Fate of the Furious and in Furious 7, how they just kind of go back and forth. But this is a full entire movie filled with that. There are so many scenes in this movie that you guys will absolutely love. And if for nothing else but the action, go for this movie for the banter between these two and for the comedy, the pure comedy, the belly laughs that you get from these two being on screen together. And as a nice side bonus, the action scenes in this movie are all just super ridiculously over the top, but are awesome to watch. This is one of the most purely entertaining movies I've seen in a very long time. There's not much substance to the story of this movie. You can pick it apart, you can make fun of it. Nothing really makes sense, but watching these crazy action stunts happen on screen that look ridiculous, that seem ridiculous. There was a kid sitting next to me, like 2 seats over in the theater when I saw it, and he whispered over to his dad, "How is that guy still alive?" And I almost died laughing because it's so true. How do these people survive these things? But you know what? I shoved popcorn in my face and I enjoyed the crap out of it. So I want to get actually some deeper thoughts into this movie. So I'm going to get into some slight spoilers in these action sequences, and especially with the villain being a full sci-fi Terminator RoboCop creation from this company, which slight spoilers there. But yeah, we're going to get into some details about this movie here. So if you have not seen the movie, I do recommend it if you are a lover of action, if you're a lover of this franchise, and if you're just go into it knowing that it's ridiculous and none of it really makes sense. Just shove popcorn in your face and enjoy it. So Idris Elba as the villain in this movie was really threatening, and I really enjoyed his presence in this movie, and he ate up this role. He had so much fun playing this character that has a kind of a beef with Shaw, Jason Statham's character, and they have some past history. It takes both of them to beat Brixton because he is fully cybernetic. He says the more mechanical I am, the more human I am, which makes absolutely no sense. It's not true at all. But he's a villain having his monologue, so it's fine. But the movie does start off with Vanessa Kirby's character, which I absolutely loved Vanessa Kirby in this movie, and I loved her in Mission Impossible 6. She was fantastic in that movie, and she's even better in this one as Shaw's sister. And I think a lot of the heart of the movie actually lands with her and with that dynamic with Shaw's mom, who is in jail, Shaw himself, and Shaw's sister. And so it starts with her on a mission to get this virus, which is very Mission Impossible 2-esque. And Brixton comes in, kills her entire team, actually stabs a guy with a brick, which you find out later. You don't get to see it, but it's implicated heavily that someone is stabbed with a brick, a la Ryan Reynolds. Like I said, spoilers. But he's a crazy villain, and the way that they take him out in the end, where Hobbs has to take a hit for Shaw to hit him in the back of the head, because he needs to look at his target for his AI system in his head to kind of predict different movements, kind of like Iron Man's armor. It really does feel like a superhero movie in the fact that you get to see from the perspective of Idris Elba, seeing all these different things pop up on his eye screen thing, and it shows the different speeds of the punch and different things like that. And you even get a few shots when he's wearing his motorcycle helmets, like Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. sitting in the studio with the camera just recording his face and him saying his dialogue. There's a lot of that in this movie, and probably the craziest action set piece in this movie is probably going to be the end finale when The Rock literally holds down a helicopter. Even for a split second, he's holding a chain that is attached to a helicopter when he's on a car, and he pulls that chain to a little anchor thing where he can reel it in with his bare hands. That is ridiculous. But you know what? It's The Rock. You gotta love him. You can't... Of course he can do that. I believe it. Of course Hobbs can pull an entire helicopter by himself with just his biceps. And you know what? I just... I love this movie. And of course, by the end of the movie, of course our heroes win, but it really does tease this new villain, and it really does feel like a superhero movie with 3 after-credit scenes. There are 3 after-credit scenes, guys, and they're kind of setting up the team, they're setting up the villain. Who knows who this villain is? I have a couple of theories. My first theory was it was going to be Charlize Theron's character from The Fate of the Furious, because she got away at the end of that movie, but I feel like she is going to stick with the main franchise. And I think they also said he at one point, but even, the little people working at this tech facility cannot even know the identity of this overlord that's running the whole thing. But I think it actually might be Ryan Reynolds, because there's a few times where you hear his voice and it cracks a little bit, and you kind of hear Reynolds. He's a very distinct voice, very Deadpool distinct voice. That he made it clear from Deadpool that you will know his voice, even from Detective Pikachu. That was Deadpool. That was Ryan Reynolds. You know what he sounds like. So there's a few times where the little voice scrambler thing cracks a little bit and you kind of hear his cadence in his voice. So I think it might be setting up for Ryan Reynolds being the villain in the next Hobbs and Shaw movie, which, you know what, I'm kind of nervous about. I think he would end up being more of like a Sam Rockwell and Iron Man 2 type of villain, where he's more just there for the jokes. He's not really a physically threatening, imposing villain like Idris Elba was, who ended up dying at the end, killed by this mysterious character. So who knows if it's Ryan Reynolds or not. But if they do build a team with it being Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, Vanessa Kirby, and then you add on Ryan Reynolds, and then of course Kevin Hart, who makes another cameo in this movie, which is pretty funny. I'm not really a big fan of Kevin Hart, but I enjoyed his part in this movie. Of course, it actually had a good reason to be in it, because he was the one who chartered the flights from, I believe it was Ukraine all the way to Samoa or something like that. I'm not exactly sure where it was from, but a crazy flight. And of course, you have to have the air marshal. You know, that's Kevin Hart's, sent him over there. So why not? This movie was ridiculous. I loved it. As you guys can tell, I started planning this video a long time ago, and I decided to throw it together because I was super excited for this movie, and I was also super nervous. If this movie was bad, like I said, this video would be completely different at this point, and actually really hammered home the point that I was trying to make with this movie, and that this franchise has really evolved itself into being something more than just street racing, car, crime dramas that they used to be. This is really a crazy franchise that took Hollywood and what they've been doing with other franchises, and they really sucked it in to one franchise and just took little bits and pieces from everything, and it's being more successful than the DC movies and the Dark Universe that failed completely, and the Transformers universe that they're trying to do. It is doing better than all of those. Hobbs and Shaw, even though it's not, you know, a main Fast and Furious movie, still made $60 million opening weekend, which is pretty good for a spin-off. I think its budget actually went down by $50 million from the Fate of the Furious, which had a $250 million budget, and this one had a $200 million budget, so they did better. The $60 million is not bad, but this movie is going to kill overseas internationally, so who knows how much this movie is going to make. I really hope it makes a lot to get a sequel with Reynolds and Kevin Hart and this crazy ensemble that has honestly kind of surpassed the original Fast and Furious franchise. So I'm excited for these movies. If you guys are too, make sure you comment below what you thought of the movie and what you thought of this video. If you like the formats, this is something I'm trying to do, overthinking the Fast and Furious franchise, which I put way too much thought into these silly movies. And also, if you understood the reference to a movie I was making, this entire video, the entire format is referencing to one of my favorite comedies of all time. So if you guys know what it is, comment below. And if you don't, I am very disappointed in you. So thanks guys for watching. Hope to see you guys all in my next review. If you want to see more of these, like I said, let me know. This was a lot of hard work, but I think it will be worth it in the end. So thanks guys, subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next video.